In talking about this war, when the Putin stooges want to present Russia as some great empire, well, it's not an empire. I mean, it's only the biggest country in the world, federation with more nations enslaved by it than any other country on the planet. But wanting to give Russia credit for being so mighty, these Putin stooges will, well, basically just repeat Russian propaganda, talking about how Russia is fighting NATO and doing so well and how powerful it is, how all these NATO vehicles are being destroyed in combat and all this other stuff, right? It's Russia versus NATO and being able to stand up to NATO. Russia's great, I guess, and powerful and all this other stuff. But when talking about who's actually winning this war, all of a sudden it's just Russia versus little Ukraine. Why don't we talk about what this war really is that Trump wants to end, right? Proxy war between NATO, United States, and Russia, right? Who's winning? Who's really winning the war? Come on. It's not Russia, it's the United States. Right? How many NATO soldiers have died in this conflict? In official NATO capacity, we don't really know, but I don't know, maybe 10, 20 or something like that. How much territory has NATO lost? How much military equipment? Well, it pales in comparison to Russia, right? How's NATO or United States economy doing? What about the Russian economy? Is the American president as bad as he may be? Is he perceived as a pariah, a war criminal, a terrible, terrible person by, well, at least half the world? Yeah. This war wasn't about territorial gains, right? If you listen to all the Putin stooges, this was about protecting the Russian language and the innocent Russian people and all this other bullshit, right? Preemptively attacking Ukraine so that Ukraine or NATO, whatever latest bullshit Russian propaganda makes some of these unfortunate dupes spew. Right? This isn't about Russia expanding its territory because it's not an empire, right? And then when it comes to talking about who's winning this war, they count every square inch of territory that Russia has taken as if it were, like scoring goals in the soccer game or something like that. You guys don't make any fucking sense, those of you who say this dumb shit. Russia is going to lose this war. Okay? You can't, on the one hand, talk about Russia versus NATO, and then when it comes to keeping the score, all of a sudden it's just Russia and Ukraine. Whatever happened to the Oryashnik missile? That was supposedly so scary and was a game changer. It was going to do all these things, right? Even though the United States has this technology too, and other NATO countries, I believe, as well. What happened to the Oryashnik? Where is it? What happened, guys? Did Putin call Trump and ask for permission to shoot another one and was told no? Because they had to ask permission to get that first one off the ground and, to hit Ukraine and what? Do nothing. All these fantastical stories about what happened underground, right? Oh, it's underground, so you can't verify it, but, believe what I say because I heard it on Russian TV or some Telegram channel, right? Get the fuck out of here. Russia's losing this war. You can't, on the one hand, when it's convenient, say that Russia is fighting NATO, but then when it comes to tallying what's going on and who's winning, all of a sudden NATO is not part of the game. You can't tell me that this isn't about territorial gains and then try to measure victory by territorial gains. Yeah, it's about territorial gains, but I mean, in order for it to have strategic significance, well, Russia basically has to take a lot more than it has so far, right? And probably all of Ukraine and then move on from there. Russia is going to lose this war. This wasn't about protecting the Russian language or Russian people, because Putin has killed more Russian speakers, both technically Ukrainian and Russian, than anybody else in this century or as of late. So it can't be that. This can't be about protecting yourself from an attack and NATO expansion while at the same time you're withdrawing all your troops from the Finnish border, the latest NATO member. Clearly you're not fearing an attack from them. It can't be about protecting Russian lives while killing all these Russians. Okay? It can't be about protecting the Russian language when the result of your war, and this was predictable, has made all these Ukrainians that use Russian as their first language want to puke at the sound of it and go back to speaking just Ukrainian. Speaking Russian in Ukraine right now because of Putin, kind of a faux pas. Let me take a sip of my tea. The goal was to change the government in Kiev and basically turn Ukraine into another Belarus. Zelensky's still in charge and looks like he's got Trump's ear, or is definitely listening to what Trump's telling him, is working with Trump more so than Putin. So, I mean, yeah, that's not looking good for Russia. The goal was to demilitarize Ukraine. Ukraine has arguably the most powerful army in Europe. Thanks, Putin. This you can't say that this is about bringing Ukraine into your sphere of influence. You fail at doing that, and then you want to convince the people that you're somehow winning the war because you grabbed what, 4,000 square kilometers of territory at the cost of what, 50 dead Russians per square kilometer, 100 casualties total per square kilometer. Your economy is in shambles or on its way there. I mean, all your oil depots are on fucking fire. Clearly, you don't have all this military equipment that you claim to have. You don't have all these missiles, or you can't use them. Your Black Sea Navy has been basically all turned into submarines. Your ships are sinking all over the damn place, or they're being held up by NATO forces in the Baltic Sea. You can't leave your fucking country except to go, to North Korea or China. You can't talk to me about wanting to prevent an invasion of Russia, which is why you started this war. You start this war, Ukraine invades Russia, and you're somehow achieving your political strategic goals. You're not. You're fucking up. Russia's going to lose this war, especially now that Trump is in office. So Trump appointed Keith Kellogg to bring about this 24-hour, 100-day peace as of late. And these are some of the points inside this peace plan. Ending political isolation of Russia. The plan calls for ending Russia's political isolation by establishing diplomatic contacts with Moscow and halting the demonization of Russian leader Putin. This shift in approach is intended to open the door for renewed dialogue between Russia, the US, and NATO, aiming to reduce tensions and facilitate a potential peace agreement. Right? So try to bring Russia into your, if not sphere of influence, some type of cooperation, right? And pull them away from China. That's why they want to give something to Russia in order to not have to worry about fighting Russia. Russia's a big problem, but the problem is China. So you want to split those two apart and at the very least be somewhat friendly with Russia, right? Allow them to exist and coexist. And Putin's only going to be around so much longer. Maybe get somebody more, you know, normal uh, in power, somebody who's willing to work with the West, right? What Russia was after the Cold War and during the beginning of Putin's reign, right? Ceasefire and peace negotiations. So basically, not what Putin wants, right? Yeah, okay, ending political isolation and not demonizing Putin. Yeah, that's what they want. But do they really want to be friendly with the West and, not so much with China? Probably not. Definitely not all the Eurasianists in Russia, right? Two, ceasefire and peace negotiations. Both Russia and Ukraine would be pressured to implement a ceasefire and initiate peace negotiations. The proposal emphasizes the need for external pressure on both sides to bring them to the table, aiming for a diplomatic resolution despite the ongoing war on the ground, right? So Russia doesn't want peace because they haven't attained any of their stated goals. Putin looks like a loser to the elites, his people. Igor Girkin just came out, that Russian military commander who was responsible for a Malaysia flight, shooting down the airliner. Um, Go listen to what he had to say. Russia's losing this war. Russia is going to lose this war. It's not propaganda bullshit that you hear through, all the propaganda channels. That's a guy who knows what he's talking about and doesn't give a shit. He's just being honest. I mean, he's in prison anyway. What are they going to do to him? Kill him? You think he gives a fuck? He's just telling it like it is. Right? So if this peace plan goes through, Ukraine wants peace. Putin doesn't. That's not a win for Putin. Peace with the conflict frozen where it stands might be the end of Putin. They might get rid of him after that, especially if some of these things they're proposing here or that are being talked about are put into action. Putin might be falling out of a window himself. Incentives for Russia. To encourage Russia's participation in peace talks, the plan offers several incentives. Delayed NATO membership for Ukraine. So not no Ukraine in NATO ever, but delayed, right? What, 10 years? There was no, Ukraine didn't have any prospects of being in NATO anytime soon, especially, or not the least, because it's been at war with Russia since 2014. So it wouldn't have been accepted. It would have been vetoed by so many different countries that don't want to go to war with Russia right now. So, I mean, this is kind of a nothing burger, really. But, it looks good on paper. It sounds good. And maybe Putin can spin this and sell this to his people somehow. But this changes nothing. 10 years? Retention of occupied territories. Russia would retain control over the Ukrainian territories it currently occupies, a significant concession in the peace settlement, right? They get to keep what they got. What they do. I mean, yeah, that's kind of a given. You got to give them something, They took it. Sanctions relief. The plan proposes partial lifting of sanctions against Russia with the potential for full sanction relief and a return to normal relations with the U.S. contingent on Russia agreeing to a peace deal that is acceptable to Ukraine. Right? So piecemeal lifting of sanctions. If Russia's on good behavior, then they'll keep lifting the sanctions, right? Russia's getting dog walked. Pressure on Russia. While offering incentives, the plan also stresses the importance of maintaining pressure on Moscow. The US would continue providing military support to Ukraine, reinforcing its defense capabilities and ensuring that Russia faces ongoing resistance. Well, so much for demilitarizing Ukraine, right? That's a big fucking flop. Can Putin survive that? I don't know, man. That's why he wants the war to continue. Because so long as it does, there's no change of government, and, I guess he stays alive. He stays in power. Ukraine would receive long-term security guarantees, primarily through bilateral agreements, ensuring that Russia does not threaten Ukraine's sovereignty in the future. Now, how do you ensure that, right? There's been all this talk of various NATO members putting troops on the ground, some kind of a peacekeeping defense force, right? Now, they wouldn't be there in official NATO capacity, but I mean, so what? Let's say they're able to put 50,000 troops on the ground, and they're from Latvia, Estonia, Poland, maybe Finland, and a few other countries, right? Those are NATO members. If Russia attacks Ukraine and starts killing those people, it basically just declared war on all these different countries. It can't even defeat Ukraine. What is it going to do with all these other countries participating in the conflict, fighting against them? It's not going to look good, right? And even if Russia were to attack a NATO member, let's say Poland, inside of Poland on official NATO territory, that still doesn't mean that all of NATO just goes after Russia and gets involved in a conflict necessarily, right? So, I mean, does this change much? This officially, on paper, Ukraine wouldn't be in NATO if these troops from some of these NATO member states were on the ground in Ukraine and would serve as trigger forces, right? You kill these people, it triggers all of the militaries to react, right? You declare war on all these people. But I mean, so that's not official NATO membership, but that's definitely the opposite of demilitarizing Ukraine, and definitely the opposite of moving Ukraine away from NATO forces. So while Ukraine wouldn't be a part of NATO officially, I mean, it already does have a lot of NATO countries' support. So while the goal was to move Ukraine away from NATO, it's just getting closer. Non-recognition of annexations. Ukraine would not be required to formally recognize Russia's annexation, but would agree to refrain from using force to alter the current territorial status, right? So they could try to get these territories back diplomatically or however, not by force. But Russia doesn't get to say that this is ours, right? It wouldn't be recognized as theirs. They could hold on to it and control it for the time being, right? But this leaves the door open for Ukraine getting their shit back. Continued military support. Ukraine would continue receiving U.S. military assistance, possibly in the form of interest-free loans and vague security guarantees to bolster its defense. What does that mean? Vague security guarantees, right? U.S. boots on the ground? Probably not. But I mean, I don't know, maybe nuclear weapons sharing program or something. Hey, why not? Why not? Why not? They already know how to do all this stuff, right? Or they just need to wake up a few old guys that worked in these nuclear power plants in the nuclear weapons department of the Soviet Union, right? They already have the know-how probably and the facilities necessary to build some kind of nuke, right? I don't know. I'm just saying. Economic benefits. Tariffs would be imposed on Russian energy exports, with the proceeds allocated for Ukraine's reconstitution, offering some economic relief in the long run. So Russia, in some capacity, would be told to pay for the damages it's done and the land it's stolen, the people it's killed. Pressure on Ukraine. One of the most contentious aspects of the plan is the pressure placed on Kiev. If Ukraine refuses to engage in peace talks with Moscow, the U.S. could potentially halt military aid, significantly impacting Ukraine's ability to defend itself. Zelensky, he's on board. He's saying, let's go. Putin's dragging his feet. And if he doesn't come to the table, Ukraine's going to, it's likely, that's what Trump is saying is going to happen, is going to get all those things it needed to get from Biden when they had Russia on the back foot. To put, all the nails it needed to put in the Russian army's coffin, destroy them. They had a great opportunity there, but Biden didn't want that. And Trump's administration, or at least Keith Kellogg, is criticizing Biden for that, saying that we would have done it, right? The isolationist Trump, who was supposed to be buddy-buddy with Putin because, MSNBC told you so and you believed it, even though screaming at me that anytime I take a critical view at some of these so-called left-wing media reports, I'm buying into the propaganda. Thanks, guy. Yeah, you bought the fake news while telling everyone that it is fake, right? But you believed it. You fell for it. All this talk about Trump being an isolationist and withdrawing from all these conflicts, and oh my god, yeah, that would, if I don't understand, and I said this at the time, how the Trumpers would paint Biden as weak, which he was, and say that Trump is a strong leader, so much better than Biden, and yet expected him to just, give Russia everything that it wanted and be pro-Russia somehow. I mean, that would have been even weaker than Biden. Like, I don't know why some of these people are even allowed to vote, man. You shouldn't. You shouldn't be allowed to vote. You have no idea what you're voting for, obviously. Isolationist? Who told you that? So, this United 24, which I think is Ukraine, I don't know, I think it's Ukrainian media or whatever. And a lot of people have criticized, like, U.S. left-wing media are criticizing this plan as somehow pro-Russia or something. Get the fuck out of here. What are you talking about? If Russia accepts this, even as vague as it is right now, that's an absolute crushing defeat for Russia. Ukraine's already fucked. Anyway, right? Like, can you make things any worse for Ukraine? Yeah, if this war continues, yeah, you make it worse for Ukraine. It's going to be bad for Russia too, but I mean, Putin wants this shit to go on. Ukraine does not. So this is once again just left-wing media bamboozling you, or pro-Ukrainian people wanting to get a better deal. You know what I mean? Yeah, you could always get a better deal. Don't get me wrong. But this is, if Russia accepts this plan in any way, shape, or form, that's crushing defeat. This goes completely against denazifying, demilitarizing, pulling Ukraine from under Western NATO's or Western, wing. This is the West dictating to Russia, telling them what's up, and taking Ukraine's side. I just don't understand how. Well, I understand how. See, this is the problem with a lot of people. You've been brainwashed. If there's one thing that Russia does great, is brainwash fucking people, and not just their own people, but foreigners, using social media, the internet, I mean, it has brainwashed a whole bunch of gullible people who are, upset for whatever fucking reason. Angsty, rebellious, and just bitching and moaning about everything. And, disliking the fact that they have a government and they're telling them what to do. And I'm not saying there's like no reason to dislike your government or be critical of how what it's been doing and how it's been controlling our lives, right? I'm with you there, but I mean, shit. If you think the West is bad, well, move to fucking Russia or China. You know what I mean? I don't. If you think whatever criticisms you have of the West, yeah, Russia's so much worse, as is China, and yet, like, you want to support that? It just doesn't make any sense to me, on any fucking level. And it's just so frustrating hearing people just move the goalpost all the time and just spit these nonsensical narratives that are just self-refuting and contradictory. That don't even make any sense. It's stupid. And this is why you're so easy to dupe and convince that, Trump is an isolationist or he's strong but he's weak. Man, I bet so many MAGA people are just the low level. The people who don't know what's going on, right? Not like people around Trump necessarily. I bet you they're furious. They thought Trump was gonna. That's what they've been telling us. He's gonna become the president, and he's just gonna cut off all aid to Ukraine, and Russia's just gonna take over. Murder all these people, destroy all these cities, and just take over Ukraine. And they're gonna be able to say that they picked the right team or some dumb shit like that. Excellent, high level, totally riveting geopolitical analysis. It doesn't take a fucking genius. I'm certainly not that to be able to, see through some of this bullshit. But I don't know. Something wrong with people, man. It's so disappointing. Anyway, Trump is an isolationist. that's one of the funny ones. But yeah, I want to talk about some of his shenanigans as of late. Greenland, Canada, Panama Canal, things of that nature. There's been so much going on. Trump has definitely put his foot down, and while I think there's definitely lots to criticize and be wary of, because you never really know what's going on or what could result from this. At the same time, I kind of like what he's doing. I like the fact that he's putting his foot down and implementing some of these things that should be implemented. So I definitely support a lot of what he's been doing. And I'm cautiously optimistic. Yeah, don't get me wrong, because I don't know. Do we have another, imperialist on our hands who's just gonna want to tell everybody what they can do, can't do? Just take away people's freedoms. Ultimately, I don't know. But geopolitically, he's doing the right thing. He's doing the right thing, in my opinion. Maybe I'll make a video about Greenland and Canada, Panama Canal. But in closing, I just wanted to talk about this dichotomy of globalism versus isolationism. You know what? No, this has gone on long enough. Let me think about these two concepts a little bit more and make a video just on that. But yeah, long story short, um, Russia's losing this war, man. They're failing. They have not achieved any of their goals. They have failed miserably. They grabbed up a little bit of territory, a good amount of territory at a very, very high cost. perishing so many people's lives, destroying other people's lives. It, the repercussions of this are going to be felt through both Russian and Ukrainian societies for decades to come. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible what he's done. For what? 4,000 square miles of land that ain't even his officially. He just They just get to hold on to it for a little bit until further notice. I mean, yeah, he has not achieved any of his stated goals, so you can't say like he's winning. You can't tell me that this isn't about territory, but then to somehow try to prove that he's won, count every fucking square inch of territory he has grabbed up. You're not making any fucking sense. And if indeed he is fighting NATO, not Ukraine, then we'll stick to that fucking story, however inconvenient that may actually be. NATO's winning this war. The West is winning this war, obviously. But it was fucking winning with Biden's weak ass, doling out just enough aid to Ukraine to not have them win and not have Russia lose. Just having these fucking people just kill each other endlessly forever, because it in the long run it benefits, it weakens everybody, and it in relative terms strengthens the United States. I guess that was the strategy. Having no strategy for Ukraine, never saying that we want Ukraine to win, we want Russia to lose, because they didn't want any of that. So yeah, that was weak. Now that US has a strong leader like Trump, Russia's fucked.